Yehi Ratzon, Parashat Vaykhel, Parashat Shkalim, 5779. The limud shebila refuat kol hacholim, ובתוכם תניא בתורה מגלית, יוסף יאיר בן אביו וחווה, רב סימון בן סימה, בתוך כל שאר חולי ישראל, ולעילוי נשמת איתן אליעזר ben Mordechai, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Libracha. Like we did last week, I just wanted to start with a midah from Ethan. So one of the things I think that we experience very often is judgment. It's very, very common in the world that we judge others, we judge ourselves. There's a lot of judgment. So I remember in one of my first chavrutot in the Chovad Talmidim with Ethan, I said to him that a person who like in Masechet, I was telling him like in Masechet Makot, that it says that sometimes keeping something, one thing is as important as keeping everything. And I remember he jumped out of his seat and Ethan was like, well, I've never heard that before, that like keeping one thing is so special. So I guess my bracha for this week is we work on the midah of judgment and be able to know that we don't know, and that we have more patience for the people around us. So when we enter into Parshat Vaykhel, it's the next time or the second time that we hear in a very short span of time about Shabbat. So the Sfat Emet in the year 1859 asks a very simple question. He says, "Hinek kvar nitana Shabbat." We already know Shabbat in Parshat Yitro. We receive Shabbat. Shem tells us, "Keep Shabbat, Shamot Yom Shabbat." We know that Shamor and Zachor b'dibur echad. So we already have Shamor and Zachor. We know about Shabbat. And then comes our parsha and says, "Ach et Shabtotai tishmou ve'ela advarim asher tziva Hashem la'asot," and teaches us about Shabbat. So again, we hear about Shabbat. He says, why? Hashem already gave us Shabbat. U'ma inyan mitzvat Shabbat shenit. Why do you need to tell us for a second time? So just to understand the question the Sfat Emet is asking, we hear about the mitzvah of Shabbat in Mamad Har Sinai in Parshat Yitro, and then 3 parshas later, in the middle of nowhere, we hear about Shabbat again. And so his question is very simple. It's if we already heard about Shabbat in Parshat Yitro, why do we have to hear about it again? And he says a phenomenal answer. Says the Sfat Emet, Yitachen ki Shabbat yesh bo kama madregot. It could be that maybe Shabbat isn't the same level for all different people. Meaning, there are different levels of Shabbat. There's a level of Shabbat that is higher, and there's a level of Shabbat that is lower. And maybe the repetition of saying Shabbat again was to come and teach us that Shabbat was not a simple mitzvah. It's not did you or did you not keep Shabbat? Did you keep this level of Shabbat? Or did you keep this level of Shabbat? Or did you keep this level of Shabbat? And so although the mitzvah of Shabbat is given already in Yitro, the repetition is to say that Shabbat isn't an action, it's something that is much more defining of the person. Just to give a little parable to understand this, if you give a 4-year-old a physics book, and you give him the same book when he's 18, it's not the same book. So says the Sfat Emet, the keeper of Shabbat defines Shabbat much more than Shabbat defines the keeper, meaning that the experience of keeping Shabbat is defined by the person. So says the Sfat Emet, what was the difference between Yitro and Vaykhel? And he says there's one simple difference: the sin of the Egel. When they received the Torah in Yitro, there was no sin of the Egel. And they received Shabbat from a level that he calls B'shat Kabbalat Torah Hayu Lemala. At the time of Yitro, they were so high. And what they experienced was that Shabbat could reach a person if they're special. But what happens after the sin? You're not special anymore. You're not that great. Maybe Shabbat doesn't belong to you. And that's why Vaykhel says Shabbat again. What happens in Vaykhel? He says, Be'achar achet hayu b'madriga lemata mima shayu koden. Now we've reached a lower level. And so maybe when we were special, Shabbat was part of our lives, but now that we've broken our commitment, the game is over. Comes Parshat Vaykhel and says, you need to realize that Shabbat has a level of special. Yeah, special people can earn a level of Shabbat that might be unique to them. But that doesn't mean that if you've fallen, that the game is over. The concept of Shabbat is to teach you that there's an ability to connect even when you're disconnected. And so I think to go back to the same idea that we were speaking about judgment at the beginning, we judge people because we think their actions define them. We think they are their actions. But maybe Shabbat teaches us in Parshat Vaykhel, when it appears for the second time, that a person is more than just his actions. And we should have that blessing and that bracha, to have the patience to be able to see someone or something in the world that has been broken and shattered and realize that the story isn't over. Shabbat Shalom.